There we go. All right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming to today's session where we're going to be talking a little bit about Scopus. I'm assuming today I'm not really going to be assuming any baseline familiarity with Scopus as a platform, but I do want to. So because of that, I'll basically just be giving an all-around kind of preview of what Scopus is and some of the basics of how you can get started with using it and or training on it. So a little bit about me. My name is Max. As I said just a moment ago, I'm a customer consultant working on the Elsevier team. I'm here to answer questions that you might have about Scopus as well as Science Direct. I can help if there are any technical issues that you're ever encountering. You always feel free to reach out to me. I can most likely either help you solve those issues, or if it's ever helpful to have like a one-on-one session, if someone has a really specific question or something, a problem that you're running into that you just don't really know where to turn, you can reach out to me directly, and I'd be more than happy to walk you through it to the best of my ability. At a high level, though, what I want to, I guess, speak about Scopus too. That's of course the start of the show today. So Scopus, in the short and sweet of what it is Scopus is a source-neutral, expert-curated abstract and citation database of peer-reviewed content. We're taking, so what there are a couple parts to that definition that I want to highlight. Number one is source neutral. What that means is that although Scopus does come from Elsevier, and those on the line may know Elsevier also as a publisher of academic of scientific content and journals, we are not by no means are we only including Elsevier content or Elsevier journals, and we actually make a point of making sure that we have really broad content coverage, which I'll get into in just a moment. So we're pulling in content from over 7,000 different publishers. Elsevier is just one of those 7,000 plus. We're taking in content from over 27,000 serial titles, 250,000 books, and 11 million conference papers to build this large corpus of work that you are able to search within the Scopus platform. In total, there are over 87 million items in Scopus, with the citation information and the references linked to those for 1.7 billion citation references dating back to 1970. And those 87 million items are aggregated also into profiles, and those profiles are created at the affiliation level. So those would be an institute like Howard University, and at the author level in order to identify the individual researchers and the work that they are doing. There was a question in the chat that I just saw whether or not we can get the slides afterward, and the answer is yes, absolutely. So I'll make sure to distribute those when I send around the recording. The recording will be sent as a link online, so you can view it online and then download it. And if there's any, if it's helpful to post it externally, you can do that through that link as well. This slide here goes a little bit more into the content coverage for Scopus. There's a lot of numbers here, so I'm not going to go too far into this, but the key takeaways here that I want to highlight is over here on the left. You have this gradient of boxes here that are talking about the number of journals by subject area, and you'll notice that although there are over 27,000 individual serial titles within Scopus, they are not really clustered in any single subject area. It really spans the full breadth of scientific information. And one of the key criteria for inclusion in Scopus is peer review. And everything that's going to be included within Scopus is going to be coming from a peer-reviewed source, whether that's a journal or a conference proceeding, or a peer review or a book. It's also worthwhile to notice, like I said, these aren't really coming from any one specific subject area. We're really spanning all subject areas. And for that reason, Scopus is really a comprehensive resource for researchers, no matter what discipline they're working within. We do include, as I mentioned a minute ago, conference papers and books content, but I do want to caveat that with the reason why the coverage for those conferences and for that book content does vary by subject area. And the reason why is that we would aim for Scopus to include the version of record when we're indexing content, and we understand that for different disciplines, the medium or the outlet for communicating that research it tends to be different across different subject areas. For the health sciences, journals tend to be really important, but for engineering and computer sciences, for example, conference papers tend to be a much bigger avenue for sharing research. And as a result of that, the 144,000 conference events that we cover for the conference papers are primarily clustered in the engineering and computer sciences. And for books, those are primarily coming from social sciences, arts, and humanities. I do also want to mention that there are a lot of numbers, there are millions of different records within Scopus, but it's also important to understand that the content within Scopus is also curated. We're not pulling in things algorithmically, we're not just scouring the web and scouring any information that we can find. All information within Scopus is vetted by a content selection advisory board, which is essentially a panel of experts that work with our team in order to make sure that what's included within Scopus is always going to be scientifically rigorous, and to make sure that it's meeting high standards of quality for peer review, for rigor, and for performance as an outlet for those journals. And that's an ongoing process that does happen on an ongoing basis. So if a journal does start to underperform relative to the other journals in Scopus, or if we have reason to believe that a journal becomes predatory, we will actually do actually at times discontinue indexing within Scopus. And I can speak a little bit more to that maybe a little bit later if there are any questions about those policies. I do also want to highlight, before we get into the real demonstration, that this is just going to be a very high-level quick tour of Scopus. For any librarians who are on the call today, I also want you to be aware that we have a Scopus certification program that's specifically targeted at librarians for the sake of supporting you as you're working with patrons on using Scopus and helping them get better acquainted with it. The Scopus certification program is essentially a six-week course of self-guided online modules that allow you to dive more deeply into Scopus and the different features that it includes. So I do highly recommend the Scopus certification program for any librarians who are on the line and want to get some more information about how to better support your patrons. And you can reach out. I have a link that I can send around for Scopus certification if there's anyone who's interested in that. A couple other resources I can highlight. We do have a Scopus LibGuide available on our website that the library is welcome to use. I don't know if you have a Scopus LibGuide on any of your sites, but you're more than welcome to use content directly from that LibGuide. The link is included in these slides, which I will distribute. You can also find more information about recent Scopus developments on the Scopus blog. And if you ever have any questions about a specific feature, or you want to look at frequently asked questions, or if you're having a technical issue and you want to reach out to the help desk, you can also do that through the Scopus Support Center, the link to which again will be here on the right. All right. So that was a lot of information. So I'll pause right now. Are there any questions before we get into the actual demo? Okay. So I will take that as a no, and I will share my screen one more time and move over into my browser. I'm gonna hide my bookmarks bar just to give myself a little bit more space. And here we are. So this is what it looks like when you sign into Scopus. You'll want to, for any end users who are watching this at this training, you will, my recommendation is whenever you are trying to get access to Scopus, that you start from the library homepage, because the reason why is that for most institutions, and including Howard, by using the links that are available on the library homepage, you will then be able to get a more seamless access into Scopus, particularly if you're working from off campus. However, I've skipped that for now. I've gone straight into the Scopus platform, which is what you're seeing here. As soon as you sign into Scopus, I do highly recommend that everybody using Scopus signs in as the first thing that they do. If you don't have a Scopus account, I do recommend you create one. The reason why is because that will become more important later on down the line when we're talking about alerts and saving search history, because you can, by having a Scopus account, which would be separate from signing in into, say, the proxy or through the single sign-on through Howard. The Scopus sign-in profile actually allows you to unlock some additional functionality within Scopus. Up here, I have a set of initials here. Patricia Stratford is a pseudonym, if you will, a demonstration account that I use. So that's why you see the PS initials up here. That does show that I am in fact signed into Scopus. And the fact that I'm seeing the Scopus search page demonstrates that I am signed in successfully and I do have access. If you see the Scopus preview page, you'll want to again go back to the library homepage, and in order to get access through the campus proxy or other campus access. Within Scopus, there are three primary search functionality. There are three different forms of the search that you can do within Scopus. The first one of which is a document search, where you're searching for a specific piece of research within Scopus. The other is an author search, when you're looking for information for a specific author. You want to view that author's profile. And the other is affiliations, where you want to view an affiliation profile. We also have a new tab here that you may not see over on your side, this researcher discovery. This is an example of an upcoming development that we're currently doing a pilot with some of our accounts. So you may not see this researcher discovery tab on your page, and that's totally fine, because this is something that's still being developed and is still being piloted in certain regions. The idea here being that this will give an additional opportunity for researchers to find information, to find specific researchers who, by searching for a specific discipline or specific area of research. But again, for now, since it's not fully rolled out yet, I'm not going to dive into this too much, but I do want to make you aware of it to kind of highlight the many ways in which we are constantly improving Scopus and looking to make changes and make it more useful for researchers. So to begin, I'm going to start with demonstrating the document search. So again, this is when you're looking for individual pieces of research that are indexed within Scopus. So there are two main types. There are two types of search that you can do. You can either do a basic search or an advanced document search. The basic search is the one that you see here, where you have a drop-down menu with field codes that you can choose, and then the search bar. The advanced document search is, unsurprisingly, a little bit more advanced. It helps to have a little bit more familiarity with the Scopus search syntax in order to use the advanced search. But the basic search does allow you to do many of the same things, but it gives you a little bit more of an easier way to do that by giving you this almost like wizard-like an interface for building the search query that you're looking for. Whenever you're searching Scopus, you do want to make sure that you specify which field code you want to use. By default, it will be searching in these title, abstract, and keywords, but there are a whole host of other field codes that you can search from, and there are even more that you can find with the advanced document search. So I will go ahead and enter a sample document search. Let me think about a good one. All right, so this is an example of a search query that I've created for myself using this wizard here that you can find in the basic search. So I'm looking to find information about ampicillin resistance and salmonella. A couple things I want to highlight here. You'll notice that in between each one of these search terms, I have included, so I've put each one of them in an individual portion of the wizard. The reason why I've done that is because it makes it a little bit easier to build a more complex query. And because this Scopus is actually placing these operators in between each search term, and you can actually visualize the way that it's doing that. I also used wildcard here in the second one. The asterisk is a wildcard for one or any number of characters. So this will give me search results including resistant to ampicillin, as well as resistant, CE to ampicillin. And then salmonella is just another search term that I've entered here. I do want to give you a word to just a word of advice, if you ever are entering terms into a search query, and if I had instead just typed ampicillin, if I, instead of adding these two lower search terms, if I had instead just added them all in one, it actually would have done the same thing. If I hit search now, what Scopus will then do is it will add these operators in between each search term automatically. So it's not necessary to use the search builder, but I did include it there just to kind of demonstrate what it might look like if you were using that, if you were trying to create a really complex search string with and operators and or operator, or the and not operators or the or operator. So I'll hit search here, and you'll see up here at the top of every document results page that you see, you'll always see the search string. Excuse me, the page is flashing a little bit as it's still trying to load. But up here, you can actually see the search string that was just run at the top of at any document search page. So like I said a minute ago, even though I only entered ampicillin resistance and salmonella, it still gave me the and operators in between each one of those. So that's something to be aware of. If you don't want those and operators, you want to use a proximity operator instead, you'll just want to make sure that you are aware of that and that you're doing that while you're building that search string. So when you see the number of results that you're getting, if it's the number is much larger than you're expecting or much smaller than you're expecting, it's always helpful to check this search string up here at the top. If you ever want to send an alert, so to come back to one of the questions that we talked about just a minute ago, if you ever want to send an alert for a document search, so if you want to be notified by email whenever there is a new set of results that are coming for this search string, you can do that right here by hitting set alert. And as long as you have created a Scopus account, so again, making sure that you're signed in up here at the top, then as long as that's the case, you will have the ability to set alerts as well as to save queries. So if you wanted to really quickly run this search query again, you can save it to your Scopus account. And then going up here to the upper right corner, you can view the saved list of document results, save search queries, and your alerts in order to modify those and come back to those very easily. So this sample string that we have put in gave us about 6,200 document results, which you can actually see those individual results over here on the right, and then over on the left we have a set of filters that you can then use to very quickly modify this search string and filter these results. If you only wanted to see, for example, items published since 2017, just the last couple of years, you can select the years that you want to choose, and then coming up here to either the very top with the refined results or the very bottom, you can either limit to or exclude. So limit to means that I'm only going to be looking at those handful of years, and you'll again see up here at the top that the search query itself has changed. So again, whenever you're modifying your result, I do recommend double checking that search query at the top just to make sure that you have the query that you're looking to get. And then you can do the same thing if you want to exclude results. If you did not want to see review papers, for example, you could come down to the document type, select review, and hit exclude. I won't do that for now, and I'm actually going to go back one so that we can get our big set of results from just a moment ago. And while that loads, whenever you have a set of document results, you'll have the ability to start exporting those and to start playing around with those a little bit more. If you ever want to export a set of results or save them to a list within your Scopus account, the way that you would do that is by selecting whichever ones you want to choose, either individually or coming up here to the top, selecting all or selecting the page. And you can then begin exporting them. We're actually doing some updates to the export page as well. We have gotten a lot of feedback about the fact that there are some limits on the number of records that you can export from Scopus at a given time. If you want to include the citation citation information alone, that you can only export 20,000 documents at a time. But if you wanted to export all of the information that's within there, if you wanted to include the bibliographic information, sorry, select another one of these. If you wanted to include this column as well as the citation information column, then the maximum number of records you could do at a time would be 2,000. However, we are doing some updates to this functionality to make it a little bit easier to export large amounts of records, which we recognize is really important for certain use cases, such as systematic reviews. Once you select the number the format that you want to export to, you have a couple options here. You can either export to an RAS format for EndNote or another reference manager. You can export directly to Mendeley or to RefWorks, or you can download them as CSV BibTeX file or as plain text. Once you select the file that you want, the file format that you want, you can select the fields that you want to include in that export and hit export. And then that file will then export and download to your computer, or open up RefWorks or Mendeley, or then open up RefWorks or Mendeley in a new tab. I also want to highlight, so saving to lists. If you wanted to save these to your Scopus page, or to your Scopus account, you could then do that by creating a new list, coming back to that again very quickly up here at the top. Or if you wanted to analyze your search results. This is another really, I guess, pretty unique feature about Scopus, is in addition to allowing you to find research, it also has a whole host of metrics and analytical tools that are built into the platform that allow you to really dig a little bit more deeply into the information about those, about the documents that you've just pulled. So I'll demonstrate what that looks like really quickly. Analyze search results up here at the top. So again, we've had about 2,600 document results that came up before. One of the analyses that you can do is the number of documents by year. And you can see, this is helpful to see the level of interest in a topic over time. So you can see there's a really big uptick in this and interest in ampicillin resistance to salmonella in just the past couple of years. Even relative to just 2017, we've really almost doubled the number of papers that are being published in a given year. But there are others that you can dive into a little bit more. Documents by author, if you wanted to get information about who are the top researchers in a given area. If you're an undergrad student who wants to get information about possible graduate advisors as you're thinking about your next step, you can do a Scopus search result and view the top experts in that field, who are the most prolific authors in that field. You can also view documents by country. This would be based on the author's affiliations. Subject area, this would be based on the journal in which it's published. And you can also get a little bit of information about funding sponsors too. This is helpful if you wanted to see. So the information that's here is pulling in from the funding information that's provided by the publisher, which is indexed within Scopus. And it's using those funding declarations in order to determine how many of the papers in that set of results that you just gave are reporting funding from the Wellcome Trust, as an example. And if you are applying for a grant and you want to see other papers that have been awarded grants by the Wellcome Trust, you can click any one of these data points. Another important thing to understand, you can click any one of these data points and it'll actually link outward to those, to the documents that it's referring to. So there were 62 articles that reported funding from the Wellcome Trust. By clicking that bar for the 62, it opened up a new tab and created a new search function, new search query to limit to only just the papers that are reporting funding that I just specified. So you can then open up any one of these and open up any one of these papers and then allow you to get more information about them. So now that I've gone into like some of the high level stuff about documents, about searching for documents, and getting at and analyzing the search results that you're getting from those document searches, let me go a little bit more into what it actually looks like for when we're indexing papers within Scopus. So I'll open this one up here. Give it just a moment to load. And this is what the Scopus document details page looks like. So there's a lot of information that we're indexing in Scopus for every piece of research that we do keep indexed. Of course, basic ones like the bibliographic information, the title of the paper, where it's coming from, what type of article it is, whether or not, but we also we have included a lot more fields in the Scopus document details page in the last couple of years. One of the new ones that we've added is open access availability, so that if you wanted to, while you are performing your search result, or while you're performing your document search, if you only wanted to see papers that are available through Gold Open Access, you actually can do that. We have that available here as a filter. If you only want to see Gold Open Access papers, you could limit to. This is an example of a paper that is available through Gold Open Access, as demonstrated over here, or as illustrated over here on the left. And if you wanted to actually view the PDF of this paper, we do make it pretty easy to do that. We have a View PDF button, which will then attempt to retrieve the full text of that paper if it's available through Open Access. And then we'll also include the additional options through the Campus Link Resolver, and some other options such as viewing at the publisher page. All the options that you want, if you wanted to take a look at the all of the full text options that we have identified for getting the access to that paper, you can go over here to view full text options. If the view PDF isn't working, for example, you can view it at publisher. If there's a repository version that's available, you can view that. And then we also have the option, depending on the campus settings, you do have the ability to actually integrate ILL requests into Scopus and other ways to notify the library that you want to get access to a specific paper. Over here on the right, we have information about the citations and the references. So this paper has been cited about 300 times, which is very respectable for a paper that was just published a couple of years ago. And if you wanted to view all of the documents that are citing a given piece of work, you can click right here, view the 300 citing documents, and it'll do a new search for you so that you can view each of those papers individually. The reference information is also included within here. Again, we include the references for all papers going back to 1970. Before 1970, we don't have those the reference information included, but we do have it for all things moving forward. And the closer we get to contemporary day, it will of course be the coverage will be much better. Scopus is not a full text database, something else to keep in mind, but we do include the full text of the abstract, which you can actually see down here, and does allow you to do the searching for within the abstract, the full text of that abstract itself. However, if you wanted to do a search and you wanted to search within all parts of the article, such as the discussion, the methodology, the results, those you can't search within Scopus, but if you wanted to view those, you can then get the full text through a variety of ways within Scopus directly. We do include also keywords in Scopus. We include both the author keywords. So these are the keywords that are provided to the journal by the author, and then the publisher passes those along to us. And we also do include some index keywords coming down here. So these are important for if you ever want to do, if you're doing a search that requires the control vocabularies. We do include the index keywords for mesh terms, which are coming from Medline, as well as M-tree terms coming from Embase, and the engineering village terms that are coming from our engineering databases as well. I do want to, I guess, give a word of caution about using or relying too much on the index keyword search, because Scopus, unlike Embase or Medline, is not a thesaurus-based database. So it's not, so the functionality for searching these controlled vocabulary keywords is quite a bit more limited than what you would see in another thesaurus-based database like Embase, but it is available there to you if you want to if you do want to use those the keyword search when you're doing your search methodology. We do make sure that we include those to provide more signals rather than fewer. Other things to mention here, we do again include some funding details. So whenever the information is available from the publisher, we do index that. So you can see this paper has actually reported quite a bit of funding of sources, as well as a bunch of metrics. So Scopus we've worked a lot in the past several years to build out the analytical functionality of Scopus. And so we include those Scopus metrics here within the document results, or within the document details page, so you can get more information about how a piece of research is performing against other pieces of research that we have indexed in Scopus. So this one is in the 99th percentile by number of citations, which is excellent. It means it's got more citations than 99% of all papers in Scopus. It's field-weighted citation impact, which is essentially comparing this paper to the average paper in its given field, is 22. Field-weighted citation impact 1 means it's perfectly average. 22 means it's 22 times as well cited as the average paper in its field. And then we also integrate some other metrics that are coming from PlumX. PlumX is an alternative metrics provider. So this is giving information about how are researchers engaging with this piece of research beyond the scholarly literature. So beyond just citations that we're getting from other pieces of peer-reviewed research, is it also being read by readers on Mendeley? Is it being saved to their libraries? Is it being mentioned in the news? So this is a really great example here. It's been tweeted about over 200 times. And if you wanted to get more information about those, if you wanted to actually view the tweets, you can click the View PlumX Details page, and then that will take you to this page, the PlumX website. Excuse me, which does allow you to get some more information about where are where is all of this coming from? Where are these metrics coming from? And then you can view those tweets, for example. And then I think that's most of the things that I wanted to speak to on the document page. So before I move on to speaking more about author profiles and affiliation profiles, I do want to pause very quickly. Are there any questions from the folks in the audience? Okay. So it seems like there aren't too many questions, which is great. I'm glad. I hope that means that I'm being clear, and that everything is clear, and that there just aren't many questions, because I'm managing to answer them all. So all right, let's keep going. Talk a little bit more about and I want to talk a little bit more about the sources in Scopus, the author profiles, and the affiliation profiles as well. So the author profiles I want to highlight here. So whenever you see an author's name within Scopus, it's always going to be a link, and that link is going to link outward to the page of that author. We've done a lot of work in the past several years. This is another area that we've done a lot of work on in the search of making Scopus as useful as possible. And we've done a lot of work to make sure that the algorithms that are compiling author profiles are as good as possible. And we found that when we benchmark our author profile functionality against other databases like Web of Science, they consistently outperform other databases, both in terms of accuracy and completeness. When I say accuracy, I mean that that when we find a paper and it has the name Rumina Hassan, or another name that maybe is more common, particularly for certain parts of the world outside of the United States or outside of the West. The names oftentimes there can be names that can be very similar to each other, and some other databases are not always as good at differentiating between the Rumina Hassan at this specific university versus another university in another country or another part of the same country. However, the algorithms that we're using to compile the author profiles are much better at differentiating between people who have similar names, and making sure that they are identifying that even though they have a similar name, that they're being attributed to separate profiles, despite the fact that they sound similar. And even though they're still very accurate in differentiating between different different researchers, they're also very good at making sure that those profiles are as complete as possible, so that when somebody has many papers that are indexed within Scopus, that all of those papers are being captured within that single author profile. To view the profile, you can do that by clicking the author's name and then clicking view profile. And this will show you what the author profile as a whole will look like. We've also incorporated more analytical functions into these author profiles, such as showing these trends by the number of documents published and the number of citations received. And we also are giving kind of a high-level overview of the work that this researcher is doing by presenting that information graphically, and also giving you an overview over here at the left. So this individual author has over almost 200 documents that are indexed with Scopus, has been cited 5,000 times by over 4,000 individual documents, and this researcher has an H index of 38. Which is can be helpful to understand when you're benchmarking into different researchers against each other, to understand how prolifically and how well cited an individual author is. So this author has an H index of 38, meaning that they have 38 documents that have 38 citations or more, which is a very respectable H index, particularly for someone who's been publishing for about 30 years. Coming here within the author profile, you can by scrolling down a little bit more, you can see information about the number of documents that are indexed here. And you can also view all of those documents here by either viewing them within the author profile, or viewing the list as a search result by clicking this link here. You can also view all of the documents that are citing an author by clicking the view references document, or coming up here, the papers that are citing this author. We have made a lot of changes to the author profiles lately. One of the really exciting changes that we've implemented is that we've incorporated preprint content into author profiles. So this is an example of an author that has a handful of preprints that they've published in the last couple of years. A couple of things to note about that. The preprints are not indexed like the peer-reviewed content. They are only featured within the author profile. The intention there is that we want the preprints to be another kind of indicator, another illustration of the work that a researcher is doing that maybe hasn't made it into a peer-reviewed journal yet, but may be coming down the line. We want to make the author profiles as useful and as complete as possible, giving a kind of a complete picture of the work that a researcher is doing now, and that maybe still be in the process, and still maybe many years down the line from being peer-reviewed and being published in a peer-reviewed journal. We wanted to make sure that information is available here when it's possible. You can also view information about the co-authors. Who is it that this author is frequently collaborating with? And we've also included information, another really recent and really exciting, in my opinion, update that we've added is information about grants that are received by authors. This author, it looks like, doesn't have any grants data that we've affiliated just yet. This is another thing that's still being built, still being iterated, still being developed. And so there are, we are not intending right now for this information to be fully comprehensive for the awarded grants data, but we're looking to add more information about it and continue to build upon these. I actually did pull up a Howard researcher who has a handful of awarded grants that have been attributed to the paper, just to show to the profile, just to give you an example of what it actually looks like. So what we're doing right now is we're pulling in funding data from a handful of US-based funders, and we're linking the data to the awardee data that we're getting from the funding source, in this case, NSF. NSF has designated that they have 5 different grants that have been awarded to this individual researcher, and these are the names of the grants as well as when they were awarded. If we click one of these, we can get a little bit more information about that award. So when the grant was awarded, the grant ID, which clicking this allows you to link outward to the NSF page to get more information. And you can see more information about who the principal investigator is and who the co-awardees are. So Dr. Rawat, it appears, was a co-awardee on this one, as well as some more information about the funding, the funding description, and then by linking outward to the NSF page, you can get even more information. So this is still very new. Like I said, this only was just rolled out in a beta testing, I think of like something like 4 months ago. So it's still very new. If there is any feedback that you have on this, if you can see this being helpful for your researchers, I would love to hear about that. Feel free to reach out to me, or when we're doing questions at the end, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that as well. So there was the question before also about setting alerts for author profiles. You can do that if you wanted to, if you're an individual researcher and you want to keep track of when papers are indexed within Scopus or when they're cited within Scopus, you can set those alerts. So setting this alert here will give you information about when a new document has been added to your profile. Or you can do it again when you've gotten a citation to one of your papers that's been picked up by Scopus. So this is actually this is an even better author profile than I expected, because it also has been linked to the author's ORCID profile. So the ORCID IDs are a cross-publisher persistent identifier that are really helpful to for Scopus and for other platforms as well, to identify when a specific researcher has published a paper, and they want to make sure that all of their documents are being picked up and being attributed appropriately to that single author. By linking the ORCID ID at the publisher when they're submitting that paper to the publisher is a great way to do that, because once that once that paper is published, the ORCID ID will then be passed on to Scopus, and we can then compare that ORCID ID to whatever ones are available on the author profile. If there isn't one available here on the author profile, authors do have the ability to link that by accessing the profile and then linking their ORCID ID. And if they ever notice that there are errors on their profile, because, although we've done a lot of work to benchmark these profiles against other platforms, they are ultimately still being compiled by an algorithm. So those algorithms are not perfect. There always will be things that fall through the cracks. You have the ability to suggest changes to the author profile within the profile itself. By hitting this edit profile page, you can specify whether or not it is your own profile. So in my case, I'm requesting changes on someone else's behalf, and you can specify whether or not, so this paper is a different Dr. Rawat, and I want to remove it from my profile. You can do that. And then whatever changes are suggested will then be sent on to our team for changes. This author also has preprints that are available on this profile. If there are not if there's a preprint that's missing, if there's a misattributed preprint, you can remove that through the edit profile feature. And same thing with the awarded grants as well. Going back to the author profile, I mentioned before, there are sometimes authors that have similar names. So we oftentimes, on occasion, Scopus will think that an author who uses two different forms of the same name maybe has two different affiliations, maybe has a part-time teaching position at another institution and publish under a slightly different name under that affiliation. You have the ability to, if Scopus does differentiate between the two of those and thinks that they are two different people, you have the ability to suggest changes by going to either using this function, view potential author matches, and then selecting which other ones need to be merged. Or if you perform an author search, so if I go back to the search page, you have the ability to search for an author either by name, including affiliation or not. You can also search by, actually, it looks like that might not be there anymore. But you can search by name, and if you find that there are multiple versions, if there's someone with multiple affiliation profiles, you have the ability to merge. So this is an example that I know this is a very prolific author, and unfortunately, because he has so many different collaborating institutions, they're not always captured. So what you can do is if this is your profile and you want to make sure that they get merged together, you can go to the author affiliation, or excuse me, go to the author profile search, and then search for the name that you want, and then submit a request to merge those authors. Then that request will then go to our profile corrections team, who'll then just make sure that it is a real request, that it does make sense, that there are no red flags, that maybe the mistake was made in error, and you can then and that will help with making sure that the information in Scopus is as accurate as possible. We also have the affiliation profiles. So here's the affiliation profile for Howard. So this gives you a high-level overview of all of the work that that is being published by authors at Howard. Coming over here a little bit more, you can view the breakdown by the number of documents that are published in a given subject area. So the biggest contributor to Howard's research footprint are the top three are medicine, chemistry, and the social sciences, respectively. And if you wanted to view only the medicine papers that are published at Howard, you can either you can come down here to the documents by subject area, and clicking this 3,700 document results will then run a new search and show you the papers that are published in that given subject area by Howard University authors. I did take a look at this profile before we got started today, and I noticed something really great is that Howard's hierarchy is actually executed really well. It's possible that there was additional work that was done on this, either by the research office or by a member of our team. But the up here at the top, when we're looking at the number of documents for Howard University, there are two different counts, and I want to clarify what we mean by that. So the number of documents by whole institution means that this is the number of documents that are included for all institutions that are listed as being underneath Howard University. So that's documents that are attributed both to Howard University and the College of Medicine and the hospital and the School of Business, and it's making sure that all of those are being counted at the same are all being counted together as part of the same organization. But if you only wanted to see, if you wanted to make sure that you excluded anything that was being published by the hospital, for example, you can choose this affiliation only, and that would remove some of those additional search results that you're getting from other affiliated institutions that are underneath the university level. This hierarchy here is showing you what are those other institutes that are being rolled up into Howard University, in case you wanted to be aware of what's the difference between looking at only the institution versus the affiliation only versus the entire institution. Then you can come down here to look at the affiliation hierarchy tab, and that'll give you a quick overview of that. These affiliation profiles, similar to the author profiles, are aggregated by algorithms, so there is always room for mistakes and errors, and we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to make suggested changes. Anybody who's in Scopus does have the ability to suggest changes to the author profile, or excuse me, to the affiliation profile. And what I mean by suggesting changes is specifying that the address that's provided for the institute is not correct, or the version of the name that's used up here at the top is not 100% correct, and there's a better version that should be used. And those can be done over here by going to the affiliation profile actions and hitting suggest changes. Here, mine says something slightly different. It says edit institution profile, because I also have additional administrative permissions in order to access the institution profile wizard. So if there's anyone either on the line or anyone who's watching the recording from the Office of Research, for example, who wants to make sure that the information in Scopus is as accurate as possible and wants to have more higher level super user permissions in order to make changes to the hierarchy, for example, you do have you can get access to the affiliation or to the edit institution profile, but there's just some additional steps to take. And if you have any questions about that, please do reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to get you set up there. This is another space where you can set up a document alerts. So to go back to the earlier question about alerts, if you want to do that, here's another example where you can do that. And then finally, so we're running a little bit low on time. So I will want to, I do have one more thing I want to run through. Before I get to that, let me pause one more time to see if there are any questions about the profiles that that are available in Scopus. Okay, great. So not too many questions today, which is perfectly fine. Again, I hope that means that I'm doing a good job. All right, so let's continue. One last thing that I want to speak to is the Scopus sources page. So at the top of any page within Scopus, so up here, you'll always see a handful of things, one of which is the Scopus logo in upper left, and then on the upper right, you have information about yourself, the link to your Scopus page, and also up here in this top bar too, you'll see the Scopus sources page. So by clicking the sources button, you'll be taken over to the Scopus sources information. This gives you information about all of the serial titles that are being indexed within Scopus. This is information that's actually publicly accessible. You don't need a Scopus profile in order to get access to the Scopus sources page, but I want to highlight it because of what I said earlier about the Scopus, about all of the sources that are indexed within Scopus are curated by our Scopus Content Selection Advisory Board. And because of that, we want to make sure that you have the ability to view all of those sources that are there within Scopus. What are the years for which they're being indexed, and how do those sources compare to one another? We use a metric called site score in order to compare different journals to one another. Site score is similar to the journal impact factor in its philosophy. So it's essentially taking the number of citations received over a given time frame and dividing it by the number of documents published in a time frame to give you kind of essentially an average of how well cited papers are when they're published in this journal, which gives you a proxy for the level of prestige and in some ways the level of quality for those journals. If you wanted to see, only wanted to see the number of documents, or excuse me, the total list of sources for a given subject area, you do have the ability to do that from the sources page. You can search these sources in a couple different ways, either by subject area, title, publisher, or ISSN. In my opinion, the most useful ones tend to be the title and the subject area. If you wanted to get information about a specific title, you can search for that specific one. So if you wanted to see by a specific journal, you can search for it by the title here at the top. Or if you wanted to see all of the journals that are included in a given subject area, if you only wanted to see the plant science journals in Scopus, you can select that subject area and then view all of them here. So we have 600, a little over 600 results that came up. And you can benchmark all of these by their site score. So these are currently arranged by site score, but you can arrange these in other ways. If you wanted to get more information about a specific source, you can open up the source details page where you'll get more information about the Scopus content coverage. This journal is indexed from 1996 to present. We also include the ISSNs here, and information about the journal level bibliometrics, such as the site score for 2021. So this is saying that the average paper in this journal gets about 40 citations over a 4-year period. SJR and SNP are two other journal level bibliometrics that are not proprietary to Scopus, unlike site score, but we give these here to give you some more metrics and some more data points to when you're evaluating journals. This can be really helpful if you're looking to identify what are like the top journals in a given subject area, so you know where you want to submit your paper. And it also gives you, because it also ranks all of these papers by subject area. So in this case, this journal is the #1 journal in plant science, and it ranks in the 99th percentile, which may give you some pointers of whether or not you want to submit. If it's maybe a little bit lower, that doesn't mean that it's like a junk journal, that it can't be trusted, because remember, everything here in Scopus is vetted for quality and for rigor of peer review. But it may give you, it does suggest that maybe if it has a lower cite score, it's less likely to be the paper is less likely to be well cited, and so that may influence your decisions on whether or not you want to publish in a given journal. So with that, we are unfortunately at time. I know that I could speak a little bit more to the cite score methodology if there is interest in it. Because we are at time, I do want to pause here and again, pause for questions and give people the chance to jump off if they need to. So thank you everybody for joining. If you have to jump, I absolutely understand, and thank you so much for making it. But I do have a question in the chat. What other online indexing services like Scopus in the area of medicine? I want to make sure that I understand the question. Javed, would you mind maybe unmuting yourself, or if you're comfortable doing so, to maybe ask your question by phone?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so the Scopus is a great service, the indexing service. Just want to know the other services, the PubMed or any other service, because when we are doing the search, we want to make sure that our search is comprehensive and we are not missing any article.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think Scopus is the one that I'm best suited to speak to, just because that's the one that I support. Amelia, do you maybe have some other suggestions for other resources that Howard University researchers can use when they're looking to do searches on medicine? I know, because it does depend obviously on the institutional access. So I think I want to pass that back to the Howard Library.
Right. I mean, we do have a comprehensive database selection that you can find on our website, and definitely PubMed is amongst the best or more complete version of those. But it really all depends on the area that you're studying, for sure, or what you want to research in, because there's going to be targeted databases for each subject matter, and then more broad ones too, like PubMed, like you mentioned.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Another question is how quickly the journal is updated on the Scopus database. Like those who are still in publication, not yet published, they are also be part of this. Will also be the part of the search, or only the published journals?
So I want to make sure I understand the question. So you're asking like how quickly is the information within Scopus updated after a new issue is published at the journal? How quickly is it going to be indexed in Scopus? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great.
Yeah.
It depends. So Scopus, so on the whole, Scopus is updated daily. Every single day, there's new information, new records that are being added to Scopus. It's constantly growing. But whether or not the information for a specific journal is going to be indexed every day is really dependent on the information that we get from the publisher. So the information that we get that's indexed within Scopus comes from a couple different sources. Some records are coming from Medline. So the information that we're indexing is coming from another database. So it will be dependent on when it's indexed in Medline, which is another medical database. But there are other cases where for many journals, it's coming directly from the publisher. And so how soon after being posted online, or how long after being e-published or print published, it will be made available within Scopus. There is no one answer for that, because it'll be dependent on the source from which it's coming from, and how often the information gets sent from that source to the Scopus database. But suffice it to say that the information in Scopus does get indexed on a constant basis on a daily.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So Emily and Jerusha, are there anything on your side? Are you, is there anything that I can speak to from you? And I just want to make sure that I guess it's helpful to also know like who's on the line. So I'm not sure if you are both from the library or if you're from another area. But I would love to maybe hear from about like what's helpful for what's been helpful about today's session, or if there's anything I can maybe anything else that I can speak to for you.
Thank you for this session. I'm actually new to Scopus, so this has
Okay.
been very helpful. The total session has been helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think for now, I think that answered a couple of my questions. That got me a little bit deeper into some of that knowledge that I haven't learned about Scopus. For now, it's kind of just going back, processing and putting all of that in use.
Great. Go great. And I don't know, I don't know if you're from the library, but if you are, I will send out information about the Scopus certification. I'll pass that on to Amelia. If you're interested in that, if it would be helpful to get more information about that, please do let me know. It's a really great program, especially if you're involved, if you're new to Scopus, or if you're involved in training other users on it. It's a really great resource for getting more up to speed and getting more comfortable with using it and training on it. All right. All right, so I guess with that, I will go ahead and stop there. Thank you all for attending. Amelia, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm really looking forward to, I guess we may be doing another session. I believe we're doing another session in October. So that could be another opportunity to get another touch point. If you just want to see my face again.
Right, and that one is going to be in person at the library, correct? Yes. Yeah. So definitely see your face up close and personal, and maybe get to ask a few more questions now that you've had a chance to be introduced to the information. Ask some more pointed questions later on.
Great.
Thank you so much, Max.
Of course. So that next session we were targeting October 18th. Amelia, I think I am still waiting for you on an exact time. So I'll just include that in my follow-up notes as something to just to confirm with you. Okay.
Yeah, I think the presentation we were thinking for about around 11.
Okay.
And maybe a little buffer time before that around 10, and then an hour or so afterwards, you know, for people to filter in and ask questions randomly.
Great. All right, sounds good. All right, thank you again. And it was great meeting all of you. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Max. See you in October.
Yeah, see you then. Bye.
Bye.